My sermon today starts by telling a bit of another story. This is from a book that's a Nautilus Book Award winner. It's The Holy Universe, a new story of creation for the heart, soul, and spirit by David Christopher. I highly recommend it. It reminds me of a modern version of The Prophet by Gibran. So if you like that book, then you might like this longer version of it. It's a dialogue between a sage and a seeker. So I will be the sage and the seeker. In a mysterious process that neither chance nor a supreme being can fully explain, the unfathomable mystery gave rise to the universe. The universe gave rise to the galaxies. The galaxies gave rise to the stars. Our sun gave rise to earth. And earth gave rise to life and the web of life. By web of life, you mean nature, right? Said the seeker. A common term yet again. There's a danger inherent in it. When modern humans say nature, they imply an object separate from humanity. Nothing could be further from the truth, so I use the term web of life to capture a greater reality. The web of life is bigger than nature, ventured the seeker. More than bigger. The web of life is a process of vast, mysterious intelligence that includes us. The term evokes something that's bigger and greater than the concept that modern mind holds when it says nature. So nature implies an object, and web of life something alive? Exactly, said the sage, smiling. And we are very much part of its aliveness. Not long ago, a friend shared an article on a grisly discovery on a New Zealand hiking trail. It was long dead. At least, it appeared to be. Although it continued to ooze a sticky reddish substance. Well, I may be overstating it a little because Halloween is just around the corner. The undead was, in fact, a tree stump, otherwise dead, but for evidence of sap continuing to bubble forth from its crackled bark. It was discovered this year by scientists who happened upon it while resting during a hike. Scientists Sebastian Lusinger and Martin Bade, I think I screwed up his last name. But let's just say scientist Martin. They were stumped as to how this mere memory of a forest behemoth, completely void of leaves and branches, was able to transpire water like a living tree and make sap. It was found that though no known benefit to them, the neighboring kauri tree's roots had chosen to graft themselves to the roots of this their ancestor, unwilling to let go entirely. Though it's known that carbon and other nutrients are sometimes shared mutually between living trees, never before had scientists observed water offered to a dead stump by its living neighbors, its grandchildren. Now, maybe you should not trust someone to tell this story whose dog has his own closet of clothes hung on baby hangers. Maybe I shouldn't be the one to interpret a story about trees and not anthropomorphize. It's true, the closet thing. It's my pride and my shame. But I love my doggy, what can I say? Of course, we can't apply human, homocentrist interpretations and emotions such as grief and loss onto plants. But we also can't be so sure that it isn't foolish of us to call such emotions human. The one conclusion around the discovery of the so-called zombie tree is that we may have been wrong in looking at forests as a collection of individual trees. Instead, what the scientists found is that this may be evidence that a more accurate view is forests as superorganisms. Individual trees may simply be organs of the one body. Somehow and for some reason, as if growing new underground neural pathways formed of roots and network of fungi, they have evolved to be quite physically interconnected, to risk individual survival in service of the whole, of its neighbors, and trees beyond its neighborhood. The first time I looked at the phylogenetic tree of life, has anyone seen this? The scientific tree of life it's a circle. You gotta look it up, it's fascinating. There's a YouTube video that's 30 seconds long, and it takes you on this animated journey from the first evidence of life down to where we are on this tree. It's a diagram that charts the evolutionary history of all life on Earth. I was struck by how relatively young we are as a species when you look at the whole thing. How small the branch we reside upon with other primates. Here we are, believing in and recklessly behaving as we have dominion over the earth and all its creatures. That we are in possession of the highest level of intelligence. But I often wonder when I hear stories of new scientific discoveries in nature, can humans truly measure intelligence against what we believe sets us apart? Makes us special? We know that reason, language, problem solving, and tool making, or even the ability to feel some emotion are not uniquely ours. Can we really be the golden standard, reigning above every other species? We certainly have done the most damage. I don't know of any other species over the history of our planet, spanning several mass extinctions and geological changes, who has done more collective harm in such a short amount of time. Certainly behaving in ways that are antithetical to our own species' survival cannot be a marker of the highest intelligence on the planet. I feel like I should make a disclaimer here because many of us, and by us I mean Unitarian Universalists in general, like to be the smartest person in any room. To leap at the opportunity, we're giddy with joy when we can prove someone wrong, when we are armed with facts. So before you line up to greet me after the service with your well actuallys, know that I am not, nor do I claim to be, a biologist or scientist of any ilk. I am a minister, a mere minister. I am as much of a mystic as I am a skeptic, and I'm perfectly fine with being wrong in my speculations, and even in my reporting of these stories, what I've learned about the zombie tree and other things here. Lucky for me, this is not a biology lecture. That is not why I come to church. That's not why we come to church. Rather, we involve ourselves in religious community to become better at being humans, to grow. I'm less interested in answers and more interested in questions, and the one burning on my mind today is, how did we evolutionarily come to value greed and selfishness as virtues? I recently learned something about the emotional capacity of sperm whales who've been evolving long before primates, 30 million years, twice as long as humans. Studies of their brains show that they may have up to 3 times as many spindle cells in their brains as humans. And that spindle cells are the things that allow us to feel things like love and connection. So maybe they're feeling things like love and connection in ways that we might not ever be able to comprehend. It's mind-blowing. An episode of NPR's Radio Lab featured several contestants who, in a light-hearted competition, presented their cases for the world's smartest animals. Laurel Braitman, Stanford professor and author of the best-selling book Animal Madness, chose to present the case for the sperm whale as the world's smartest animal. Here is an excerpt of her testimony. She said, "In the mid-1980s, a neuropsychologist named Harry Jerrison proposed that echolocated communications that are emotional in nature, so like grief or joy, might be expressed by whales and dolphins as more than shared information. They actually might come in as shared feelings, shared emotional experiences. Jerrison thought that this might give rise to something called the communal self, meaning that whales and dolphins might not say I, they might say always be a we. We are sad. We are sick. And there's some evidence for this." She goes on. "So in whale strandings, for example, when a bunch of whales will come up to the shore and strand themselves and die, but when we actually do studies on the whales, we find out that maybe only 1 or 2 in 100 was actually sick. Something is going on here, and I think it may be we sick." As a species, we understand capitalism and conquest more than we understand the concept of the communal self. In recent years, the term self-care has been bandied about so much that it has become synonymous with pumpkin lattes and bubble baths. I love both of those things as much as anyone, and I know that pumpkin spice is a very divisive issue, but on that I say fight me. For some folks who are caregivers, maybe not professionally, but familially, especially mothers of young children, these quiet moments to oneself may seem like the ultimate indulgence, taking care of yourself, for real. But it does make me wonder if we're not paying enough attention to growing our communal self-sensibilities when we indulge in self-care. Just a couple of days ago, I saw a helpful infographic on the difference between self-care and community care by Deanna Zant that taught me so much. She makes a distinction between self-care and self-soothing, self-soothing being more of the pumpkin lattes and bubble baths category, whereas self-care, going to therapy, seeing a doctor, eating well, setting healthy boundaries and organizing one's finances might not be as indulgent and fun, but can offer a more stable life with forward movement. She says, it takes a lot to be able to even do self-care, since the systems and cultural norms in which we currently live can feel impossible to navigate on their own. The prescription she proposes is community care. Workarounds, she says, for systems that don't inherently support care, i.e. capitalism. These include friendships, skill sharing, mutual aid, childcare collectives, formal or informal between friends, dignified supportive healthcare organizations and credit unions. Then, she says, there's structural care. These are the systems that support community care, self-care, and self-soothing. They include identity freedom, universal health care, equitable living wages, child and elder care for all, paid family leave, efficient public transportation, and environmental protection. These can all seem like pipe dreams when we look at the current state of our country and our world. In an age of alternative facts, even our ability to care in the first place is shaped and controlled to a degree by the fallacy of unbiased journalism, deciding on our collective behalf what is acceptable to care about, write about, and talk about. If only we mere humans could experience the depth of emotional communication across vast distances like sperm whales, not just understanding and empathizing, but understanding ourselves as bound up with one another. If we could only offer crucial life support in the form of community and structural care to one another without the need to calculate personal benefit, like the zombie tree. What if humans thought of ourselves as superorganisms, each an organ, part of the whole? I'm reminded of the phrase, can't see the forest for the trees, and I realize the accidental literal truth in that when it comes to seeing a forest as a superorganism. And maybe, just maybe, we can't see or recognize the community for the self in the same way. I'd like to close with another excerpt from this book, this lovely book, The Holy Universe. This is the sage, this is the seeker. Okay. Before I continue with this story, said the sage, sitting, I want to ask something. Where in this story would modern mind tell us that consciousness comes into play? Consciousness, meaning awareness, right? Asked the seeker as he sat next to her. Yes, awareness of surroundings, awareness of self. When humans came into the picture, that's when awareness kicks in. You mean that consciousness emerged with humans? Well, yeah, the seeker thought for a moment, but I have a feeling that you're going to say that that's not true. The sage laughed, very observant of you. Yes, this idea reveals a deep conceit within the story of modern mind, the idea that consciousness is the exclusive domain of humanity. Yet even microscopic creatures move away from danger and toward food. Isn't that being conscious, being aware? Well, I guess, but it's not like they know what they're doing, said the seeker. Really? Said the sage. I'm not going to belabor the point because it's well outside your experience, or should I say, outside the stories you've been told by modern mind. What I ask you to consider is how each species might have its own collective consciousness, and that we are a young species, that plants, which are hundreds of millions of years older than us, might have learned much in their own evolution and might have much to teach us. The seeker shook his head. I don't know. That sounds a bit weird. Allow me to get even weirder. Our conceits cause us to overlook the stories of other creatures, the story of consciousness and awareness of all other creatures. Well, I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical. Your skepticism serves you well. It is also your curse. It is your first reactive response to the mystery. Your highly developed intellect, which also serves you well, is yet another curse. Endlessly analyzing data, pursuing a logical explanation, insisting that one must exist, and is the only one worth pursuing even when you see no explanation. Modern mind has taught you to ignore, even denigrate your own intuition to the point where you are a stranger even to yourself. For this creative force of the infinite, this drive to greater complexity and greater order, has taken billions and billions of years to create the universe and its galaxies, and billions more to create the earth, web of life, humanity, to create you. In a mysterious and profound way, the infinite wants earth. The infinite wants life. The infinite wants humanity. The infinite wants you. While you are no more precious than any other being in the web of life, you certainly are no less precious either. Along with all of the beings of the web of life, you too are a child of the universe, created out of sacred stardust, a child of the infinite, which is a great, mysterious process that somehow wants you. Yet the fledgling sciences of modern mind denied this, and we still suffer from this denial, and the resulting alienation from the universe, the isolation from the web of life, the estrangement from earth, and the rest of humanity is the greatest of tragedies. For how in the world, how in the universe could you be anything other than yet another delightful creation of the infinite's primordial dreams? Earth, life, and you are all precious beyond comprehension, called forth by the mysterious creativity of the infinite. They sat silently for a while, feeling the sun grow warm, listening to the birds as the flock made its way across the meadow. I think I'm beginning to understand, said the seeker. Good, said the sage, smiling. Thank you.